When the crops start talking to you, maybe it's time to find a new line of work. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Today I have a review for you of Beta Vulgaris. This is by Margie Sarsfield. It is being published by Norton Company in early February 2025, and I was given a complimentary copy in exchange for an honest review. And this novel is a debut novel, and it is stunning, and it is dark. It follows a young woman named Elsie and her boyfriend of 5 years, and they live in Brooklyn, but they are spending a summer, or at least 1 month during the summer, doing seasonal work, processing sugar beets because it's really good pay, and it'll help them pay for a few months worth of rent on their apartment in Brooklyn. But shortly after they start the seasonal work, workers start going missing, and Elsie is convinced that the beets are talking to her. Look, this novel is asphyxiating. It is all flayed skin and raw nerves. It explores this type of suffering that is only experienced through actual intimacy. You have to have this intimate relationship with the novel, and as a result, you feel this type of pain and this overwhelming sense of dread and anxiety. There's no real plot to this novel, no plot to speak of. Everything I just mentioned is the whole plot. They go to work for seasonal work and they meet other people who are doing that work as well. Instead, this is a character study of a young woman who is suffering from mental illness, and she doesn't have any of the necessary supports to keep herself afloat. For instance, you find out very early on that when she had started antidepressants in college, it had helped her a lot, but now she has no health insurance, so she had to stop them. And things like this. You find out about her family life, about her relationship with her boyfriend, about her relationship with other friends, with disordered eating, with all these other psychiatric and emotional things that are going on in her life. And she has no supports in place to take care of herself. Reading this story, it reminded me, not necessarily in the specific themes or ideas, but it reminded me of a combination between Ian Reid's novel I'm Thinking of Ending Things and Coralie Faget's film The Substance. The experience of watching and reading those two pieces of art really resonated with this novel as well. Now, this novel is classified as horror, and that might be a little bit misleading. The novel or the story is certainly horrific. It's a series of car accidents lined up one after another. And as a reader, you can't do anything but bear witness. And no matter how far ahead in the distance you see these car accidents coming, you can't do anything about it. The whole story follows this character of Elsie, and we are with her in the small joys and victories that she has at the beginning of the season as they're excited to start this job. But all of those are overshadowed by this deep and constant insecurity and anxiety. And as her life and her experiences over these few weeks, they spiral out of her control, we are just along for that ride. And the writing keeps us with this profound intimacy, a type of relationship that parallels the disorientation that she is constantly experiencing. Now, there are a handful of ancillary characters, including her boyfriend and then a bunch of the other migrant workers. We experience all of those through her eyes, through the way she relates to them, and the roles she assigns them to her life, the way she thinks they are thinking about her. So, in that way, all of the other ancillary characters aren't really complete, well rounded people because we only get to view them the way Elsie reacts to them. Yet they are all interesting, they're different, they're diverse. None of them feel like cookie cutters. They feel like they have genuine stories, real stories, even though we don't get to see any of their interiority. We do see that they feel lived in, right? They feel genuine. But we only understand them through the narrow focus that Elsie has kind of filed them down to. Elsie, meanwhile, is complicated and messy, and she feels too real. Like she feels painfully, genuinely real. Her past and her present, and all of the voices in her head that are telling her she's never good enough, she's nothing but a disappointment to her family, to her partner, to herself, those all feel painfully real. So, as a main character, and since the whole story is about her experience, I don't even know if you'd say her journey, but her experience, she definitely works as a character. She doesn't for a moment feel phoned in. You get to know her, you get to feel her, and you recognize pieces of yourself in her, especially if you've gone through anything resembling some of the difficulties that she's had. And you see her making decision after decision, and they often just seem like bad decision after bad decision. And that can be frustrating, really frustrating. But you're never frustrated with the novel because these decisions make sense for a character in her circumstances, with her experiences, with everything going on in her head. So even though it's frustrating to see herself digging her hole deeper and deeper when she has chances to get out of it. There are lifelines. They may not save her, but they at least can lift her up a little bit, and she constantly rejects them. And so that is painful to witness, right? And it's frustrating, but it works for the story. It never feels forced. It doesn't feel like we're constantly, from the point of view of the author, just making the situation worse when it doesn't have to be. If you have ever lived with anyone or had friends or family that suffered from mental illness or suffered from it yourself, then her decision-making process is something that you can relate to and make sense to you. And it like tugs at every single heartstring because it is so unfortunate and so real at the same time. The writing is really skillful. It keeps you constantly close to Elsie, and as her world spirals out of control, you experience it the same way she does. So in the beginning, everything is clear and direct, but then as she starts to lose connections with reality, and as she starts doubting herself, then the writing starts paralleling that. It gets more surreal. It gets more disjointed. The prose really situates you in this troubled and untrustworthy mind of our main character, and the prose changes as her experience changes. So the writing does a great job of creating atmosphere, and on top of that, the world building is great. This young couple relocated from Brooklyn in the middle of the country doing this agricultural work that is outside of what they're used to, and the world is kind of shuttered down to the campsite and the soup kitchen and the work site. But those three places feel dirty and real and genuine, like they feel tangible. So the way the world is built and all of the backstory between our main character as well as the other characters you meet all combine with the writing to create a world that feels palpable, right? You can locate yourself in this world. They work together to slowly build a picture of the particular assortment of circumstances that keeps pushing Elsie farther and farther away from herself. And it's a distance that she's never been before, and we wait with bated breath the whole time to see if it's a distance that she can return from. This story isn't particularly fun to read, but it is incredibly compelling and it is heartbreaking in equal measures. As I said, the writing is really skillful and expert. The fact that it's a debut novel is really astounding. The character work for the main character is incredibly well done, and the secondary or ancillary characters, they don't feel particularly well rounded, but that's because they are viewed and understood through a specific lens. So they also work really well. And you may not feel good when the story ends. Like it's not that kind of story, but you will feel moved by Elsie's experience and you piggybacking on those experiences. In the description or the jacket copy, it says that this is exploring or undermining narratives of class, of trauma, of consumption, and of redemption. And those are just a few of the ideas. The truth is, there are all these different forces at work in Elsie's mind, and they're all kind of working together to create this miasma, this mess, this like toxic stew of not just self-loathing, but a fundamental misunderstanding of understanding how she exists in the world and the intelligence and some sort of inner work to realize that all of those negative views of herself aren't correct, they aren't valid, and yet not being able to shake them. So this does explore ideas of class, especially, and how class works regarding mental health. It looks at ideas of trauma and how trauma affects mental health. It looks at ideas of consumption and of wanting to be a good person, of wanting to take care of the earth, take care of the environment, to do right by others, and how that affects mental health. It looks at ideas of redemption insofar as, can you be your own savior, or do you have to rely on others? What does it mean to rely on others? And how does that affect your mental health? So if you can't guess, everything, all of these ideas it touches upon, whether it be class or race or trauma, they all have to do with how do those experiences affect your mental well-being and what kind of steps do you have to take to navigate the difficulties and obstacles that your life may create for you to find a way to exist in peace with yourself. So I think that's all I'm going to say about it. Like I said, this story is a raw nerve. It is a quick read, which I'm grateful for because it is a hard read, yet I really appreciated reading it. Usually at the end of my reviews, I say something along the lines of, I had a fun time with this story or I enjoyed myself with this story, because usually that's what I'm going for in a story. And a lot of the genre fiction I read, having a fun time is a big part of engaging in that literature. That's not really the case here. So I don't know if I had a fun time with this story, but I'm very glad I read it. And I think that if you spend time with it, there is a lot you can take away from it as well. If any of you had a chance to read this, or if you've read any other narratives that deal with mental health, especially from the inside out, and the experience of someone suffering from slow motion mental breakdown or different types of mental disorders, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that type of literary fiction, and if you think that really counts as horror or just horrific. In any case, thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. Please be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.